Thank you, Laurel, and thank you to Premier King for that presentation. The Premier outlined some of the big macro policy issues that he's concerned with, and I think that's a good foundation for our next discussion, which is focused on community-led economic development, the importance of community-based, bottom-up development strategies. And before we have a discussion, we're going to have a speaker kick off the discussion, and who better than Zita Cobb? Zita personifies bottom-up economic development in her role as a business leader, a social entrepreneur, and a member of the Order of Canada. In particular, Zita is the founder and CEO of Shorefast and the innkeeper of the Fogo Island Inn. And in those roles, she's making a tremendous difference in her community and providing a model for the rest of us in terms of contributing to a bottom-up, community-oriented economic development. And so before I introduce you to the rest of the panelists and we get into our discussion, Zita, the floor is yours to provide some opening remarks.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Good morning. Sean, thank you. Well, let's see. I think I have about 5 to 10 minutes to set us up for a conversation. So maybe I should just start with the word community itself. I think as a word, it's right up there with love and sustainability, meaning that it's seriously overused and deeply misunderstood. So it might be good for me to say what I mean when I say community. First of all, it is a physical piece of geography. It is a place where people live in some kind of a tangle with each other. And I think it's important to understand that communities are all as different as the geographies are located in, and that human culture is nothing more than a response to place, to geography. Communities are made up of, and when we say community, I think we all have some mushy sense that it means something good. But it's actually something, not that it isn't good, it's actually good and bad. It is actually, if we do it well, a coherent structure to organize our societies. And you know, it's a basic building block of our human societies. Not-for-profits, businesses big and small, municipal governments, citizens, hospitals, schools, arts organizations, all of this is a part of the community tangle. And healthy communities are actually very complex systems, and they're complex adaptive coalitions. They are places for us to collaborate and fight and innovate and problem solve and generally muck along with each other. And it is said, and I think it's so true, that communities are not just something we have, they're something that we do. We can't possibly take care of people, of ourselves, one by one by one by one. And every time we try to do that, we end up chasing issues one by one, like balls bouncing around the yard, and we think we've got one issue solved, and then we come back and the other one's boiled over. So I think if we stand back from that and think about what is the coherent platform that holds us all together so we can work on all the things that have to do with human dignity, that is actually a thing called community. And I want to be clear, there is no such thing as an online community. I have to say, I completely agree with Premier King about the importance of having a communications infrastructure and having broadband that is across all communities. As a friend of mine says, that only communities that shouldn't have high-speed internet are the ones we don't intend to keep. But I want to differentiate between the word community and the word network. Networks are platforms, largely online, not always, that we all belong to. They're super important. They are a part of how ideas move and commerce moves, but they're not communities. But we can use them, and we do, to strengthen communities. I think we all know that we are, I'd like to think, coming off of decades of ill-considered globalization that have hollowed out communities. On a good day, that kind of globalized way of functioning has been agnostic to communities, and on a bad day, downright hostile. And as a result, many, many, many communities, including in Atlantic Canada, have been reduced to loose bundles of things that just simply don't function well. And we also all know that our economic order isn't working. We are in a time that we are overshooting ecological boundaries, to put it mildly, and human needs are not being met. And of course, all of this is so much more evident in this pandemic time. The other thing that's happened in this COVID time is that we have all built a new relationship with the locals. So I think that's a good starting point. So what should we do? Well, I think a good starting point is we should all read a book called The Third Pillar, which was written by an economist named Rajan. And he says the three pillars of society are government, business, and community. And it is important to say that in his definition of community, and mine too, municipal government is a part of community, not a part of government. So I've been at so many presentations in the last dozen years since we started these projects that Sean described. It's always a mystery to me how people are selected to represent community. And that is very telling, because it tells us that if you want to have a conversation with a community, it's not clear who you should talk to. And probably your best bet is to go to the grocery store in said place and talk to the people coming in. And my point is that communities are not organized properly and equipped properly to take their rightful place alongside the other two pillars. And for absolutely sure, governments and businesses cannot deliver dignity for the greatest number of human beings without partnering with a functioning set of communities. No matter what we come up with, for example, to battle climate change, no matter what technologies we come up with that can help with carbon, none of this is going to work unless it lands inside communities and gets deployed on the ground. So let's say, where do you start? I think we start with a healthy community starts with a healthy community economy. And the rest people can figure out. If we have a functioning economy, we can figure out if we want to play bingo together on Thursday night. So that requires every one of us to grow a third eye that actually sees a community as an economic actor. Because I think this shift in perception has to start before anything else will start. Because I think we see the economic actors as being governments and businesses and maybe some people with hoodies. But actually, well organized communities are very serious economic actors. And I think communities are places, yes, we should and can invest in our entrepreneurs, but I think we should be investing in entrepreneurial communities that foster people as entrepreneurs. And I think communities, when they function well, are the best tools of innovation we have. And we shouldn't have any doubt that this is urgent work. And you may know this statistic, but it's the most frightening thing I think I've read in a very long time, that 70% of the small and medium-sized enterprises in Canada, and I don't know the statistic for Atlantic Canada, but it may be similar or could be worse, but 70% of the SMEs in Canada are going to change hands or close in the next decade. This set of businesses, small and medium-sized enterprises, are probably the biggest employers in the country. We know this just because of demographics, that people want to retire, need to retire. And so what's going to happen to all these businesses? They're either going to be purchased by probably distant capital, and it really does matter who owns what. And it's high time we started measuring gross domestic income, not gross domestic product, because it matters where the money goes. Or they're going to close altogether. So we really need to get busy to build the tools, the processes, the structures, and the levers, putting them in place in communities so that communities can be coherent platforms to exert agency and responsibility for their own economic futures and well-being. We need proper organization, so we don't have to go to the grocery store to have a conversation about our economic future. Well, we should have it there as well, but there should be a coherent body. On Fogo Island, we've recently formed something called an Economic Development Partnership, which has the municipality, the mayor sits on it, I sit on it as one of the organizations that are a big employer on the island. Our fishing co-op sits on it. And we're in the early days of this organization, but I think this is an example of how do we create, on behalf of a community, a will and arms and legs to be able to function and to be a partner with government and business. Access to capital. There's lots of money floating around the world, lots of social impact and impact investing money. It rarely lands because we haven't built the architecture for it to land in place. Literacy, we don't even begin to understand that systems literacy. We don't begin to understand how our systems, whether it's health systems or transportation systems or food systems or finance systems or energy, or all those systems pass through our communities. And let's think about the community as a node in a system. Very few people spend time to understand how is it impacting that node and what are we learning in the node. I mean, one of the things we still struggle with, as an example, on Fogo Island is our economy depends on Air Canada 8862 that comes into Gander from Halifax. I cannot tell you how much energy goes into doing nothing but trying to get it to that flight to line up with the ferry schedule, because that is a really important part of our economy. Because the systems are all designed without optimizing for the community that they are serving. So there's a lot of work to do there. Communities are lacking professional skills, whether it's law and accounting and the things that are there and when businesses need them, not always there when communities need them. So I think there are some exciting things we can do there. And perhaps most importantly, we need to develop the ability to understand our true assets through something which is a methodology that is well known. We practice it on Fogo Island, called asset-based community development. And that is the ability in every community to ask and answer, what do we have that's specific to us? What do we know? What do we love? What do we miss? And most important question, what can we do about it? And not every community is created the same. We're not all so entirely different, but those differences are important. And there isn't a one size fits all solution or answer, but there is, I think, methodologies we can all learn and practice together. So as we go forward, I think we all understand across the planet that we have to localize the global. And to build a localized global economy, we have to make the local global and the global and the local global and the other way around. And so I think the place to start is in the local. And I think no better place to start than Atlantic Canada. Thank you.